All right, and is everybody ready? I'm going to take that as a yes. And I'm going to also just apologize now for my dog, who is very upset that he is not joining in on the camp today. Welcome, everybody. My name is John Spike, and I'm going to be talking about using game design in any subject that you teach. I did also just want to share a little bit about who I am, and then just a little bit about a shameless self-promotion plug about game design too. So my name is John Spike. I mainly work as a coordinator of instructional technology in the College of Education at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And I also serve kind of as my side gig out of my innovator project as the chief creative and I put creative officer twice apparently because I was in a hurry this morning, but chief creative and executive officer of GameStorm EDU. And so basically we help consult with districts and orgs on using playful learning in what they do. With that too, this is actually what my innovator project was about, was actually helping educators with game design. And so we're actually releasing our first commercial game, and it's actually an educational board game where you create a game to win the game. Now, having said that, the things I'm going to show you today, you don't need to buy the board game to do, but again, shameless plug, if you're interested, Game Stormers is a great game for the classroom, for just family and friends game night. 3 to 6 players where you basically create a 5-card game narrative and you learn a little bit about different mechanics you could put into a game. So one thing that I put in the description of this is just some people ask why even work kind of games and game design into the classroom. From a Pew study about 4 years ago, they found about 97% of male identifying teens played games on some regular basis and 83% of female teens did. So just a very ubiquitous kind of area of interest for our students and just a great area to tap into for this kind of topic. And so again, I'm going to share some strategies within game design and kind of playful learning that you could utilize, again, no matter what you do or what field you're in or any subject that you look into. So one thing that you can do is you can simply, jump in and you can, have students design a gameful experience. And so at GameStormEDU.com, and I'm hoping when I launch the site still shows up on everybody's screen. I think I shared my entire screen. So we do have, just kind of, if anybody is interested, a process of how to make a game that we kind of walk through for any subject area. So if students get to the end of a unit and you want them to teach somebody through a game, we talk about the process. So we have a video that walks them through. And basically what we recommend is that they first start with what would it look like if a student was trying to, show like the understanding of the concept. So if they learned about what societies need to thrive, their game goal might be build the best society. If they learned about persuasion techniques, they might have a game where it's making the most persuasive argument. We then encourage them to determine a type of game that they want to design and what the mechanics of the game might be. So examples of types of games are, is this a game that needs many different types of win conditions? Maybe it's a creative or party style game in the vein of Apples to Apples or Cranium. Maybe it's a placing people around the board in strategic areas like a meeple placement game. Maybe it's a deck game where you have cards and you're taking tricks or you are battling with your cards. Maybe it's what we call a roll and do game where you use dice to roll and come up with ideas. You roll to determine where you go on the board. Maybe it's a cooperation or, on the other vein, a combat game where you're working together or working towards a shared goal or against each other for a common win condition. And then we challenge students to think about, okay, what would it look like to get to your win condition? What would that be? So do you need to match elements together to create compounds? Do you need to trick other students into guessing fake news? What might that look like? And then we think about prototype creation and play testing. And for this, when we're working with students, we try to give them a bunch of different ideas and resources for making games. And so one thing that I've developed is a designer guide for students and teachers to walk through that walks them through that very design process I described. And then the other thing that I love to provide for teachers is different tools to get this done. And I'm just excited. I just added a new card creator to our page here. Of course, it's tiny, but I give a bunch of ideas of ways that you could iterate either physically. I love dry erase cards for having students design a game concept. If anybody's a Magic the Gathering fan out there, there's the Magic the Gathering Cardsmith. I'll just show you a card creator we added to our site. This is actually one from our Game Stormers card game that any educator can use with their students. And so basically, this is all of the cards from our Game Stormers game, but a blank template. So if you wanted students to create a character card, you could do that. If you wanted them to make cards with different symbols and colors, we've given blank card templates. And a great prompt for students to really work through is thinking about what would your concept look like in a game scenario? What would that card's abilities be? How would the cards interplay with each other? If you were doing a person from a story or from history, what would their powers be, and how would those powers relate to other people's powers from that time in the game? So our card creator template is a great way for students to start thinking systemically about how does this concept interplay and interact with others, and how can you use those cards together to design kind of a game experience. So we really like kind of that approach for this. If I go back to, if I go back a little bit to our website, gamestormedu.com. There we go. And I go back to those resources. Some other things that we share are how would students make game pieces. So we have templates for a digital game piece. We've had students make game pieces on Tinkercad, represent kind of a concept they learned about in a 3D CAD modeler. I love just sets of meeples for game creation. So I'll buy my students 10 by 10 different colors of 10 meeples each to create their game worlds. Great dice creators out there. You can either generate random dice rolls for games, make your own dice in a dice template. We kind of call this the Cross Dice Maker printable templates. Or I love dry erase dice, where students can iterate and put designs on their dice that they can use to make a game in any subject. And then also there's some great game board creation out there. I love to buy dry erase boards for my students to work with. And then also Genially has game boards of all shapes and sizes that students can edit, and that can be automated to have things pop up or take you to screens when you land on different things. Or even going to something like Slides Mania, who has game design templates on their website as well. And then there are also just full game design kits. And that's actually what GameStorm Edu started as. I wanted to make a game design kit, and then I went out there and realized, oh my gosh, there's so many great game design starter kits. I like the Board Game Design Lab starter kit. It has tons of different dry erase materials, different, punch out, cardboard cutouts of different assets you can use for students to make a game. Crayola has a great younger kids design kit. And then there's also dry erase, DIY dry erase game kits out there as well from other companies. So I've offered some full game kits too. So I just wanted to share some of those resources for game creation for your students, in addition to just a walkthrough of here's the student's design guide, and then, or this is the educator's design guide, and then also a design workbook that would walk you through each step with your student too, if you're intimidated by it. So one thing that I just love is having students, even if you don't have time for them to make a whole game, is have them make some of the assets for a game and explain how they would interplay with each other. It's a really great kind of critical thinking exercise for students to get them, kind of understanding how their concept fits into a bigger world. And really, when students can start teaching others using games, and when students can kind of understand how a concept fits into the bigger system, they're really high on kind of that taxonomy of knowledge. That takes them thinking in terms of evaluation and analysis and creation on that kind of Bloom's taxonomy. They're really asking themselves, how does this concept interplay? Would this concept, what would it do if it interacted or butted heads with this concept? And that's what games do, right? There's systems where different resources, different people interplay and interact. So it's a really great exercise for students. So just wanted to share a little bit of that, kind of game design pieces as we go through here. So the other thing I wanted to do too is I talked a little bit about how design can, come up in any subject, how you can design with games. I gave you some resources on GameStorm EDU where you can have students design assets for their game, either physically or digitally. Another thing I wanted to talk about too was share some of my favorite games to use in any subject to also teach students. So some of these are commercial board and card games or digital games that we reuse for activities and teaching and learning. And then some of these too are just activities that are very playful and gameful. So one activity I really love is when I'm introducing maybe a new unit or I'm introducing people to each other, is I'll actually have students introduce themselves and then self-rate in some of the areas that I want them, to go into. So one introduction activity that I love to do, I'll do this in my professional development. I'll actually have people, this is kind of the template, is I'll have them introduce themselves up in the top, and then I'll have them kind of self-rate and then add a photo of themselves. So this is an example of mine, what is my name? What's my subject? This was a PD, where I introduced playful learning. I introduced a quarantine accomplishment and then had people add a picture of themselves. And then also I had them grab a cowl and put it on their face from, the Marvel in the DC's kind of cinematic universe as well. And then they self-rated kind of using playful assessment. So here's some of these teachers, creating their playful versions of themselves and telling me a little bit about themselves and also telling me where do they think on a 1 to 4 scale, where they stood. And then at the end of the session, I actually have them rescale themselves to see how they think they grew. So this was kind of just a really fun activity, to use playful assessment. If you want your own copy too, in this presentation, I should mention, I think I put the URL, but it's bit.ly/SparkCampGame too. I saw some people in it, but if you ever need to get back to it, that's the URL. So going back to some other playful ideas, I just love, and this was inspired by Innovator Camp. I was at LAX 18. And so at our Innovator Camp, this was a really fun game that we did, is name as many different uses for a paperclip as you can think of using sticky notes. Just doing this digitally in a face-to-face HyFlex, just the brainstorm competition. This was an example board that we did for this one, and so this was just a competition of how many different ideas could we come up with on a Jamboard, doing this activity. We've done this with, social studies teachers of, hey, how many different causes of World War II can you brainstorm in your groups on your sticky note? So I love just a good Jamboard or sticky note race is just a great gameful activity that you can do with any student, just a very simple one to get up and running. If you want your own copy, I do have just a sample one where I've kind of given that prompt on a Jamboard. This is one of my favorite activities to do. This is called the Image Battle Royale. And so this is a really fun gameful activity where basically you have 4 corners of a Google drawing or a Google slide. And then you can go in and basically each player has a prompt and they each try to find Google images that they're going to use to, show the prompt in their own unique way. So if I kind of show you this in action, it looks something like this. And so basically you put the topic up here and then you can add your Google images however you'd like. So you can add them, you can add your player names, all that good stuff. Hilariously enough, I have just activated my Google Home, so it thinks I'm trying to ask it a question right now. So should have thought about that. One kind of cool thing you can do too is after people have added their image to the Battle Royale, so all the students add their images after time has expired, you can go in and then you can poll all the students either using a polling tool, a show of hands with heads down, and then you can have them kind of vote to see who they thought had the best representation of the term. And so I like to do that because it's kind of cold. All the class sees the images that the students came up with. They vote, and then I have each player explain what they were going for, because sometimes maybe people didn't get the meme that they chose, or maybe they did more of a metaphorical representation. So getting a little bit more explanation of these terms maybe would give them a little bit more context. And then I have them re-vote in the poll or the show of hands and see if anybody wants to change their votes too. So the Image Battle Royale is really great. I like to use just this is kind of a nod to like Punch Out from the old NES games. You can do your own theme as well. So it's just kind of a simple 4 corners, 4 people square off to represent a term, a concept, from your course. So just a really fun gameful activity. Another game that I love, very simple game to incorporate in any class. It's called Vocabulary Codenames. And so if you've never played the game Codenames, basically how it works is there's 2 teams, and then each team has what's called a spy master. And basically, the spy masters are trying to get their team to guess their assigned words and not guess the other team's words. And they can only give a one-word clue with a number. So, for example, on here, looking at these 25 terms on the board, maybe I'm trying to get, my team to guess certain words, and maybe I'd say betrayal 2. And what I'm saying out there is there's 2 terms out here that I think are related to the word betrayal. So I'm telling my team, I'm trying to get you to guess 2 of these. Guess one, and then I'll let you know if that's our word or the opponent's words or not. Let's say they get one right and one wrong. Okay, play goes to the other team. They might say soliloquy 3, and they're trying to get me to guess three terms on here that relate to soliloquy about Romeo and Juliet. So that would be something where I'd try my hand at guessing those. So basically, trying to think of creative clues to give your team to guess your terms on that one. If you want to try it out, I do have these all linked through the images. These games, a lot of them also are on GameStorm EDU and our games library too. So I'll just get a plug-in for that. Another game that I love, I play this one a lot just with family and friends, but I made a digital version of the game Concept. And so how Concept works, I think I can open it up here. Basically how Concept works is you have these different little colored cubes, and you have this board of different images, and you're trying to get people to guess words. So again, you take your vocabulary from your class, important concepts from your class, no pun intended on the concepts there. And students try to get people to guess by not speaking anything, but just dragging their cubes onto different terms that they think relate to it. So, you grab this cube and, maybe you're letting this person know it's a famous female here. And then maybe it is somebody who is actually fictional. So there's the little symbol for fictional, like looks like a little mermaid or something. And then I continue to give them clues related to that to help them guess. Maybe I do some coloration that's associated with this particular person. And you can use different colors to give different parts of the clue to your students. And so they're just trying to get their teammate to guess the word is basically kind of the main premise of Concept. So a really fun kind of guessing game that you can play. And again, I just made kind of a Jamboard to allow people to do that. So there's a copy that you can make of the Jamboard to do your own. Another game that is a big hit in both my household, my classroom, and then just as a digital game, Poetry for Neanderthals is from the folks you might be familiar. They made Exploding Kittens. And so how this works is basically you can only give clues to guess terms and vocabulary in one-syllable words. So you can see the example here. If you were trying to give clues and your clue was, trying to get somebody to guess campfire, it might be hot place where you roast soft white cube. If you said hot place where you roast marshmallow, that would be illegal. Marshmallow is multiple syllables. So you basically talk like a caveman to try to get people to guess words. Very funny, very creative clue giving. In the real game, you have a big inflatable no stick where you hit people if they speak in too many syllables. I like to, if we're doing it in class, just a big buzzer, either a physical buzzer or I'll have a digital buzzer if I'm doing it online, and I'll hit the buzzer. So I just have a link to that buzzer that I use here as well. Another game that I absolutely love is called Pictures. And so Pictures, basically how this game works, there is a board game version of it, but you add 16 images to the overall game board. And then each player has different tools they can use to represent the word. So one person has a collection of icons that they can use to give people clues. So you can choose out of the deck of icons, you can choose 3 to 5 to use to represent a word, like shark, car, and light bulb, would be an example. 2 people get shoelaces. And so I represent these with scribbles in a Google slide deck that you can manipulate. You can also use colored cubes to represent terms as well. Yeah. And so I believe, I do know I am slowly running out of time here. I believe I got 1 minute left. So I did want to just get another plug for Game Stormers. And I'll just also go back to the beginning slide here, bit.ly/SparkCampGame if you want to check out more about the things I've shared today. This presentation has more games that you can do. So that's about everything. Thanks everybody for your time. Hopefully you found some good ideas, and yeah, have a good rest of the camp today.
Atari grew 100,000 in it.